So now you know where fragments are used and where we're going to use them in our app. You're probably starting to ask, why use fragments at all? If we want to group UI components, couldn't we just create a view group or maybe a reusable XML layout definition? Yes, but the real power in fragments goes beyond grouping UI elements. They allow us to fully modularize our activities, including the lifecycle events they receive and the app state that they maintain. Fragments were first introduced in Honeycomb to solve a particular problem. Honeycomb was the first Android release to support tablets, and it turned out the best way for most apps to create a great tablet UI was to put two or more of their phone activities alongside each other. For example, if you had a phone app that started with a list activity like this, which you then clicked an item would open a detail activity like this one, what we call a master detail flow, a good tablet UI would put them side by side like this. Functionally, clicking an item on this list now replaces this activity on the right rather than starting a new one as it would have done here on the phone. Now, unfortunately, Android didn't always support embedding activities within other activities. At least it didn't until we introduced fragments. Now, if you just look at the UI elements, you could be excused for thinking that you could achieve much the same thing using an activity that was built using view groups and layouts without bothering with fragments, which is true up to a point. But then you'd have to pass through all of the activity lifecycle events, manage the state of each piece of the UI, keep track of the state of each of the portions as they changed, and remember which screen elements were on screen at any given time in order to maintain app state. All of which is exactly what the Fragment Manager does for you when you use fragments. And that lets you take a step back and treat each fragment as though it were a mini activity. For example, in the world of activities, you start one activity from the other, and that transaction is recorded on the backstack. So hitting the back button will undo that transaction and bring the first activity to the front. Now, the same thing can happen with fragment transactions. In this case, rather than starting a new activity, we simply replace the list fragment with the detail fragment, and then the back button will undo that transaction and reverse it. So in theory, you could really take any app with multiple activities and replace it with a single activity that's host to multiple fragments.